Welcome back from the break. You're still watching Life Stories. Thank you for being a part of the show today. On the show today, we have the children of the independence heroes, the heroes that saw Uganda get its independence in 1962. Joining us on the show is the son to the first Prime Minister of the independent Uganda, the late Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. The late Dr. Apollo Milton Obote was born at Akokoro village in Lango Territory in the northern part of the Uganda British Protectorate in 1925. He was a son of a local chief in the Lango tribe. He began his education in 1940 at the Lira Protestant Missionary School, continued it at Gulu Junior Secondary School and Busoga College Mwiri, and finished it at Makerere College School in 1950. He went to Kenya to find work, where he became interested in politics, and he was the founding member of the Kenya African Union. I'm in the eastern wing of the Ugandan Parliament, in the office of Honorable Jimmy Akena, who also happens to be the Member of Parliament for Lira Municipality. Next on the show, you meet the man himself. How are you, Honorable?
I'm very well, thanks.
How have you been?
Quite well, thank you.
All right. So, Honorable, your father is somebody that we celebrate till present day, especially in the light of the independence of Uganda. And, you know, as we start our talk, I just want you to tell us what kind of person was he like, you know, personally, besides the fame and people and what people knew.
I mean, I always knew him as Dad, but I've also known him in his capacity as a leader, both of the country, of the party, and at a family level, he was somebody who was very friendly and also somebody who was very interested in everything that was going on. So my understanding of him goes far beyond what is mainly written or talked about. Yeah.
So, Honorable, your father is somebody who, you know, every Ugandan who's been to school, of course, of recent or even in the earlier years, has studied about, from primary school to secondary school in history, and then to those probably who do law or social sciences, you know, courses that have social issues in them or politics. We study about him at all those levels. And, you know, we can't help but want to know, you know, which kind of person was he? Like his hobbies at home, what were his hobbies?
Reading and Scrabble. Scrabble was his favorite game throughout the years. But most of the pastime he was reading. And reading was not limited to politics, anything. He would read anything and everything. And in fact, even when we were children, he used to insist, in fact, it was something which we had to do, was going to the library. And these were, of course, before the days of television. At least where we grew up in Tanzania, there's not much television, no videos and the like. So we had to borrow books, and you had to, after you've read the book, give him at least a synopsis of what the book contained. Now, even the pocket money was based on the cost of borrowing a library book. Now, the more books you borrowed, then of course the more benefits you get. So from those days, he really insisted or instilled in us the habit of reading.
Was he tough at home?
No, actually it was gentle, but he tried to find what captured your interest. So in the discussion of what books you have read, he's trying to find out where you're inclined to. You show interest in something, the next day or so you may find about 4 books by your bedside, and he'll be advising you, try this one, try that, and keeping that communication.
In 1956, the late Dr. Apollo Milton Obote returned to Uganda. He entered politics when he was asked to return to Lango district to replace a local Ugandan National Congress Party leader who had been imprisoned. In 1958, a sudden vacancy caused by the resignation of the Lango member of the Legislative Council led to Obote's appointment as a replacement. Obote won a seat in Uganda's first direct elections later that year. Obote soon became president of the Ugandan National Congress Party, one of the many parties trying to forge a unity to bring Uganda to independence. When a 1961 conference provided for elections leading to independence, Obote allied his party to the Uganda's Kabaka Yeka in order to defeat Benedicto Kiwanuka's ruling Democratic Party. He presided over the British withdrawal in October 1962. I just want to know, what was your father's profession, before politics?
In his passport, he put politician. When he described himself as a politician's politician. So his whole life really centered into politics. And he often used to say that nationalism is like a disease. Once it gets hold of you, it can completely control your life and determine exactly where you're going. So he got into politics basically at Makerere. And because of his disagreement with the administration, he was, you can say, expelled from Makerere. Started working in Jinja, then went to Kenya, and then in Kenya also he got involved in politics there. He was one of the founder members of the Kenya African Union, which is now KANU. He was involved, as I mentioned, with the Mau Mau. He was involved in the political debate and struggles until he returned to Uganda in '57 and then contested for the Legico, which was then the parliament, and continued with the politics from there.
Your father had such a big role in this country. Previously he had been a member of the Legislative Council, and then he headed one of the biggest parties, or even founded one of the biggest parties. And then he was the first prime minister of the independent Uganda, and this was a very big role. Did it ever put your family in a precarious position?
Politics has always created difficulties within the family. I myself have spent 29 years of my life in exile. I was jailed before my 5th birthday.
5th?
Yes.
You were jailed at 4?
Thereabouts.
Okay.
And that was after the coup of 1971. So there's always been upheavals and uprooting and loss associated with politics. So politics definitely has paid a toll.
How did it affect your family? Because at the end of the day, even when somebody's a president, they're human beings, and they need to come home to a family. They need to have peace and everything. So him having been up there, especially during that period when the independent state is still fresh, how did it affect your family?
Now, in my case, my view, the 60s, I was just born within the 60s. My recognition or my first memories begin around the time of the coup of '71. And that was where I can say within the family it caused difficulty. At the time of the coup, my father, of course, was in Singapore. And while we had soldiers surrounding the house, tanks outside, I believed that my father could come and just get them to go away. That was, of course, my mind as a child. And it didn't happen. Then after some time, of course, there was separation within the family, until we were able to escape to Kenya. We got returned, and that is how we ended up going into jail. Kenyan security handed us over to the Ugandan security, who first took us to jail. From jail, we...
Us, you and your siblings and your mother?
My siblings and my mother. And from jail, we were then taken from the jail and told that we're going for dinner with Amin. And after that dinner, there was one question. He asked us as children whether we wanted to go to Tanzania to be with our father, and we obviously said yes. So then Amin turns to my mother and gives her a condition that if the children go, she must remain. Or if she goes, the children must remain. And that's when my mother said, let the children go.
So, Honorable, what did your father share with you about independence?
He often used to like to describe it in very simple terms when he was discussing with many people. And he often described it as the struggle for independence was like a struggle for a loaf of bread. Now, the colonialists wanted that loaf of bread to take care of an old lady and a young child in the UK. The nationalists obviously wanted that bread for the nation. The terminology, of course, these days is the national cake. So the question of independence was how to secure the national cake, and then after securing that national cake, how do you divide it equitably within the country? And that, to me, is where the challenge still remains. There was one issue to wrestle, political power. Next issue was, what do you do with that power? How do you expand on the available opportunities and how those opportunities translate to the well-being of every citizen? And I think that is where the struggle still has to continue.
Not only to celebrate an end, but also to mark a beginning.
Today, Honorable Jimmy Akena admires his father, plus men and women who fought for Uganda's independence, but he thinks Uganda still has a long way to go. Jimmy Akena looks at Mulago Hospital and he cannot believe his mother, who was a first lady, gave birth from there. What is that one thing that your father did, or a couple of those things that your father did, and you really thought your father had his country at heart?
I can list. Let me start with the issue of health services. At the time of independence, Uganda had less than 400 doctors in Uganda, majority of whom were also expatriates. At that time, the government came up with an ambitious plan of expanding the health services, such that as far as hospital beds, it was supposed to be expanded by 80%. Now you're doing this in a situation where you don't have the personnel. So it was not only expanding the infrastructure, but also training the personnel. And up to today, you go across the country, that infrastructure which was set up as far as health is concerned is still, you can say, the bedrock of the health services in the country.
Especially in the light of independence, Honorable, what would you want us to emulate from your father, the late Dr. Milton Obote?
I think we need to revisit the real question of how are we tackling the manpower development for the benefit of the country? And the economy should be to benefit Uganda. Yes, we do need foreign investment, we do need investors, but ultimately we need the Ugandans to really rise to control the economy for the benefit of Ugandans.
Is there anything or some things that your father did that you wish he had not done, or that let you down?
No, I mean, there are things which I didn't understand, but with time, I appreciate. So, no, I will not say there's anything really which he did.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for being on the show. Thank you so much for sharing with us about your father. You know, as we celebrate independence, you can't help but look back at the people who are involved and how are their people doing and what is life like for them in the independent Uganda. We're going to go for a short break, and when we return, you hear from more of the children of our independence heroes. We'll be right back.